Welcome to the podcast with your favorite cash flow guys, Mike and Blaine, giving you the best advice while having a beer. When you're running a business, there are problems every day. Let Mike and Blaine help you out and guide your way. Cheers to the good times with Mike and Blaine for business, beer, and BS.
Hey, it's Mike and Blaine. This is episode 163. I'm Mike Blaine, also known as Cashflow Mike. That is my friend, my partner, the CEO and founder of Drive Run, the best cash flow forecasting software in the world. Blaine Birch, what's up, man?
Well, I saw your topic for today, and I was all excited, and then I saw the topic, like, that's a little dark.
Dude, even when I wrote the description, I'm like going, I couldn't even make it wittier, challenging, or funnier. I'm like going, but it's something that came up twice in the last 30 days right here in town. I'm like going, we have to talk about this. We got to talk about it.
Yeah, it's an important one. I get it. We're talking about, wrapping up, rolling up, like closing business. And, and unfortunately it is quite topical right now. There's a lot of businesses that have been closing this year, and there's probably still a bunch in the pipeline. And we're going to dive into the topic a little bit, but we'll try and keep it a little light. We'll try and have a little BS to liven the mood up a little bit. But it's an interesting topic, and it's topical topic as well.
Yes, it's just so weird, right? It's just like that. First of all, I know we're getting right into the topic, but over 200 breweries have closed this year. We're not even through the year. 200 of these things. So I'm like going, and two of them in San Antonio alone in the last month. So I'm like going, you can't have numbers like that happening so frequently without at least putting it on this show, because this is a show, by the way, if you're new, about business, beer, and BS. So two of those things happen to collide in this episode.
That's, three of them collide in this episode. I'm excited, and I know I looked distracted there for a second, but it's because we have another beer sponsor, and I looked at my list and went, oh, we have to add our 7th beer sponsor to the list. So I had to go and grab our 7th beer sponsor. We've never had 7 in one episode before, so that's super exciting. So I'm going to tell
you what, I think we might end up with an 8th. There's a person that was talking to me, she goes, are you kidding me? It's only $5 for that evergreen material. And what will you guys say? Whatever you put in the box. We'll say whatever you put in the box. We might have 8 very quickly.
That'd be amazing. So if you guys are wondering how to do that, you want to become a sponsor, a beer sponsor, just go to mikeandblaine.com, and there's a button, buy us a beer. $5 a beer. $5 per episode, $5 a beer. So you buy us a beer, and we'll talk about you. We'll mention you in like 5 episodes. If you buy us 5 beer, 10 episodes, 10 beer. We got a bunch that have gone to the end of the year already. So pretty excited to have Devin, our 7th. Thanks so much, Devin, our 7th beer sponsor. He's in here for 3 weeks. Pretty awesome.
I got to tell you about Devin though, right? Devin works with Courtney for Barnes & Noble, but the biggest, if not the best. I think he is such an LSU Tiger fan that when he inhales gold and exhales purple, or inhales purple, exhales gold. I mean, these colors just run through his blood. This guy is the biggest LSU fan I've seen in who knows how long. He even misspells the word go when he writes go Tigers. So I don't know about the education over at LSU, being a Baylor guy, but for some reason they can't spell G-O. They can't put that word together over there. They make it G-E-A-U-X. Go Tigers. Go Tigers.
Nice.
So
I got a bug in our basement here, and he keeps flying right in front of my face. Like, where the heck did he come from? Yeah. Well, thanks. Anyway, that is exciting. Super exciting. And of course, Courtney, who actually basically introduced Devin to the show. So she's our surprise beer sponsor from a number of episodes ago. So I got to thank Courtney. Even though we're not allowed to mention Courtney, we do every time.
Yeah, she's just in the other room over there. So we got Courtney, we got neighbor Pat as usual. Neighbor Pat, he was just down here yesterday. He's always bringing a beer. He'll bring beer even when it's not for the episode. This guy is so committed to it. He goes, "Hey, you just need a beer, Mike." So it's one of those things where neighbor Pat, I'm always appreciative. He's always a big fan of the show. So thanks, Pat.
And as always, Larry Weinstein, CPA in Houston, the cash flow cowboy. What was his website again?
Yeah, Cash Flow Ranch. So he is the cash flow cowboy down at cashflowranch.com. I mean, so I don't even know if the website's up, but we're promoting it like crazy. So.
Yeah, we're doing it. People are just getting 404, so coming soon. Anyway,
right.
we're still want to give you props, Larry. Thanks again.
Yeah, you got Rachel Barnett. Rachel's one of those people, just like Larry, that says, "Put me in for the whole year." Right? He just put these two people put their money up for the whole year. Rachel Barnett. If you want to know anything about QuickBooks, everything about QuickBooks, and you want to learn it fast, you have to contact Rachel over at Gentle Frog. Gentle Frog. She can teach you everything about QuickBooks.
And the other Mike Milan, christened Baltimore Mike. Thanks again, Mike. He's the one that actually sends us beer in boxes, hand delivers beer in boxes. So thanks again, Mike. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, so he sent me a screenshot of him being on the top of whatever his football pick'em league over the weekend. I said, "Man, it's always good to see me at the top of the list of things." Because the name was Mike Milan at the top of the list. So I'm glad. I mean, I guess you can get some credit, but you can continue to use my name, Mike.
And also Jackie York. We can't forget Jackie York. So that's her 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And tell us a bit about Jackie York.
Jackie York is the CFO that you need to manage cash flow in your business. She is blooming CFO based out of Hawaii, but she is everywhere all the time. She's traveled to Europe. She's traveled to Japan. She knows places, knows things, knows cash flow. Blooming CFO, Jackie York. Go check her out.
Awesome. Thanks again, Jackie. Now, what kind of beer are you drinking today?
I found a new brewery. Probably because all the other ones are closed.
Yeah.
But I found a new brewery, 903 Brewery, out of West Texas, and that's a Cadillac, and this is called it's the Cadillac Ranch, West Texas. It's an Imperial IPA. Nice. So I am really excited about it. But check that out. Where is the Cadillac Ranch? You've ever seen that where the cars are buried like halfway up? I mean, it's like almost a Stonehenge, Stonehenge, isn't it, of cars. Is that in West Texas? I mean, it must be if they put it on the.
It must be. I've seen pictures of it. I've never seen it in person, but I remember seeing pictures of it. So yeah, and
I'd be afraid to Google where is the Cadillac Ranch. Who knows what's showing?
What's going to pop up? Yeah, you never know. So so I had the perfect beer for this episode last week. I used Anchorage Dead. It was like it's a perfect beer. So then I looked through my fridge, and we're heading south pretty soon. So my beer fridge is getting pretty thin. But I found this one, and it looks like kind of Halloween scary, and it's Torchlight Brewing, and it is a limited run black lager, and I can't even read the writing. I had to look it up. It's black metal logo, which that's what that weird red type is.
Yeah.
Looks super cool, but I could not read that at all. So anyway, it's actually a good beer. It's a really nice beer. I've never had any beer from Torchlight before. I believe they're in British Columbia, if I'm not mistaken. Nelson, BC. Yeah, Nelson, BC. Small town in British Columbia. Nice beer and a black lager, which at least looks kind of dark and depressing. Which is great for this episode. That's what we're aiming for. Dark and depressing.
All right, so this is Sherman, Texas, though. But I want to say, I've had a lot of beers on this show that are not awesome. This one's fantastic. This is one of the best IPAs I think I've ever had, and it's a 903 Brewers. So I mean, if you find this, grab it. You'll love it.
Nice. That's good that's good to see. We always love to support small breweries, independent breweries. I'm going to mention one really quickly because there's a new brewery. Like I said, there's breweries that have gone out of business in Edmonton in the last a couple of years, several of them. But new breweries, Southbound Brewing opened up on 99th Street in the Happy Beer Street area. And I was there last weekend with my dad having a beer, and it was a neat little place. And I think it was actually the owner that served us. And it was really cool to see. Great little spot. So if you haven't heard of it and you're in Edmonton, go check those guys out. It's kind of a neat little spot on 99th.
All right. So as I was saying, the whole topic of this show, Cadillac Ranches and our Amarillo. Chelsea just told me that.
Oh, there you go.
They are positioned at the same angle as the Great Pyramid of Giza. All right. So I said Stonehenge, so I was way off.
That's close.
Way off. So don't come to the show if you want to learn shit. I'm gonna just because sometimes you gotta remember we make up the topic like right before the show, and neither one of us really knows what it's going to be about. So
and then we make up the content for the next hour.
Yeah, just whatever. If you want to hear two guys talking on the back porch, that's really what's happening. So, it's not always great stuff. All right, but here's what happened. I go to you guys have it in Canada called a neighborhood night out or neighbors night out or something like that. It encourages neighbors to go out and kind of meet their friends. And I think it's a national night out or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And so in our blockish, maybe 3-4 block area, people all gathered kind of in the central point and, brought in pizza. They had this sign up sheet. What are you going to bring? So people brought chips and pizzas and beers and waters and sodas for the kids. And they bought a bounce house for the kids. So, I mean, it's a kind of a big deal. And I actually like it, right? Because that was one of the things that happened throughout the early 2000s, mid 2000s is we stopped knowing our neighbors. When I lived in Federal Way, I couldn't tell you anything about anybody that lived in that neighborhood because they didn't talk to you. They just, it's called the Seattle freeze. and they're like going, we're not going to talk to you till we absolutely have to. And hopefully you'll move before that. I think that's what happened. But anyway, it was a nice thing. But on my way down, a guy goes, hey, did you hear about Weathered Souls? Weathered Souls is kind of a local little brewery here in, and I think I've had Weather Souls on the show before.
Yep.
And he says, yeah, they're closing. He goes, I'm doing some consulting work with them and they're closing. And I got these specially made cans for him of whatever the last brews were. They was just kind of emptying the kegs and canning them up. And he got a bunch of these cans. And I'm like, oh, man, what happened? I said, you couldn't save it? Couldn't do whatever? He goes, man, he just had so much debt. Because we couldn't get out from underneath it. Just so much debt, he couldn't get out. He goes, the only thing we could do was close. So I didn't think much of it. The brews that they gave weren't great, so I don't know. I don't know what happened. They weren't great either. But then yesterday, Larry, the Cashflow Cowboy, sends me an article saying, "Hey, did you see this? Another one called Busted Sandals just closed up shop here in San Antonio." I'm like, man, it is a tough business. So I started looking into this. That's where I came up with 200 craft breweries closed over the last year, just in 2024, not 23, 24. So not even a full year yet.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about why, what's happening, not just in breweries, but what's happening with other businesses. Cause there's gotta be some things we can talk about, some tips, some tricks, some traps that, hey, what happens? Because I want people, if they have to make that decision, and I put it in the description, that's why it's so heavy, leave with dignity, leave with a strategy, right? So I kind of want to go through why people have to close, and then what can they do during that process?
Yeah. And we got someone chatting with us on chat, so I'm popping on to answer every once in a while. But I remember talking with, because we're like Dry Run's a cash flow forecasting software, and we work with CFOs all the time. We're talking with business owners all the time. And I know back in it was probably 21, we were already talking about the big impact is far from hitting us, and that people and businesses were going to get hit a couple of years down the road. And that's literally what's happening. And the problem is during COVID, a lot of these places had to close down, and the debt just started to pile up and pile up and pile up. And they hung on and they hung on and they hung on. And as business started to creep back, they still have this debt. And, and then you start piling on inflation and everything. The sad part is a lot of those businesses that closed were probably running profitably. And in fact, I think 70% of the businesses, I'm sure that was a stat, that died actually were profitable on paper at the time. The problem is they have so much debt load built up. Interest rates go up. They may have been using bank loans to try and survive. Interest rates go up. Now their bills go up. If they weren't trying to nurture that burn and pay off those loans and everything, they're probably, a lot of them are actually running break even or profitable, but they just ran out of runway. And that's a really sad thing to see because they didn't really do anything wrong. And I know you've probably seen the same thing, seen it around Edmonton. Some of these businesses, restaurants and breweries and bars and shops that went out of business, it gets snapped up right away by someone, oftentimes a new brewery, because they know it's like, hey, the location works, the model works. Hopefully we don't get another pandemic.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting when you said they were profitable on paper and those type of things, that's exactly right. I think I've said this during the show before, where the informal number, right? And I say informal because this is what bankers tell me, is that about 35% of businesses that file bankruptcy are profitable on paper, right? Yeah. Making money, just can't pay their bills, right? And exactly. And I think there's a lot to do with debt, because think about how much it takes to set up these breweries. We're talking hundreds of thousands to set up the hoppers. And I don't know, trust me, I know zero about what it takes to do one of these things, but I know that the equipment is expensive. I almost bought a brewery in 2010 now, 2010. I ended up buying a different building with some apartments above and a restaurant below. But the first one I looked at was this thing called Allendale Brewery in Kirkwood. I think it's Kirkwood, Missouri, outside of St. Louis. I could not get past the cost of the equipment. I just couldn't get it. I'm like, oh, shit, I can't go into debt for that equipment. I'd have to hire a brewer full time, and I don't know if he's good or bad except for the final product. Yep. I mean, think of how much waste could be just so you get something that tastes right.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, can you imagine doing a giant batch with all of the costs that go into that? And then it turns out it tastes not great. And you're kind of stuck with it. Now, do you try and sell it, or what do you do?
Yeah. So that's just it. I think a lot of it goes to waste. I mean, even if you bottled it and put it out there, would you want that? Would you put your label on it if you knew it wasn't quality?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's a loaded question, because if you got to get cash coming in the door, you probably got to sell it. But as the entrepreneur that has a vision for the business, there's a point where you go, we're not putting our name on it, because now you're messing with your reputation and everything else too. So it is really challenging. Like it's there's going to be more breweries going under. I think part of it is the debt load and COVID and everything didn't help. The other thing was so many appeared so quickly, and there's only so much room. Like it has to be ultra competitive. And so that might be, that's also part of the issue, right?
Well, that was the big thing, right? Because everybody wanted to be in craft brewing. I mean, that market exploded. I can remember when I built Bottoms Up Brew House, there was zero craft brew. Matter of fact, you were laughed at if you had like craft brew. And I'm talking about before 2010, maybe 2008, somewhere in there, right? 2000. I know it was 7. I know it was 7 because 8 was when the bankers burnt the world down.
Yeah.
So, and I started a business in 7. It's Bottoms Up Brew House in 7. So nobody was doing it. I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have the most craft beer in this whole area. And I put 70 beers on tap.
Nice.
Right? Which is a logistical nightmare. We had to run cooled they had to be cooled tubes over the top of the kitchen down to the bar from the walk-in cooler, right? So think about that. The heat of the kitchen, I mean, it's trying to heat up this beer as it comes across the roof down there. Like, shit, it cost me more money just to put in the cooling tubes than put anything in to begin with. But here was the thing. It took off very quickly because people were just kind of doing it. And back then it was like, Blue Moon and, all the new stuff that came in. But there were so many others that were popping up. Yeah. That was just a smidgen of what's today. There's thousands of craft breweries. I mean,
tens of thousands. Like globally, definitely. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tofu's speaking German to us. So
you're getting sidetracked by the chat. I'm thinking I might have to hide the chat because it's
it's like because I'm like going. I don't speak German, so I don't.
I think it's probably not overly useful chat.
Okay. Hey, Tofu, you're a great guy. Love you, but
we got.
I don't know what that said. All right. So anyway, here. That's what I'm talking about. That was one of the reasons I think so many people failed, because when so many people entered the market at one time, not only is there increased competition, but they didn't add store shelves. They didn't add restaurant taps. Now you have to compete where, how do I get that shelf space at the grocery store, the convenience store? How do I get on the tap at the local restaurants? Nobody thought about that. They go, I got good beer. People will just come to it. That's where so many people try to do these tap rooms. Why? Why they got to do tap rooms? Because they can't get in any place else.
Yeah. Well, and they also have to move money. Like they have to earn revenue because it takes time to make your product and then to get the deals and then to ship your product out. And by the time you're actually getting paid for that product, boy, you got to have a lot of cash on hand. And it's, like having the brew house part, like the where you're serving beer and sometimes serving food, at least it also gets cash flow moving, right?
Yeah. So Larry comes up and goes, hey, you should buy one of those closed breweries, meaning me, right? Am I going, yeah, no, I'd have to quit cash flow Mike just to figure out how to run a brewery. I mean, I don't have time for that. He goes, yeah, but you could hire Pat. Well, Pat happened to be standing there while Larry's saying that on the phone. And Pat goes, fuck no, I ain't doing that. he goes, can you believe how complex? He goes, I know what I go through just in the garage to brew these little gallons for us. There's no way. The complexity of what has to happen in this chemistry experiment and to make it consistent every time. He goes, it's way too complex for me. We'd have to get a guy. Yeah. So then you got the complexity, but he's saying, here's the thing. It's unfair to the local brewers because the big brewers have now created rules with the state legislatures that make it almost impossible for the small guy to ship anywhere but locally.
How is that? How is that legal? How is that not like collusion? How is that not like the antitrust? That is literally like, should that ever be able to happen where a big brewer can go in and just like, I got money and I'm going to lobby and put people out of business? Like something wrong with that.
Well, you know what happened in the 80s, it happened to Coors. Coors seems to be, everybody thinks of that's a big thing. Miller ended up buying Coors, but in the 80s, people had to like smuggle it into their state. People would drive across state lines into Colorado from, we'll say, Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, who knows where else, and buy Coors to bring it back. Right?
Yeah.
The problem was whatever process they used to refrigerate it or brew it, they didn't have the capacity to keep it cool enough. So that's part of it. And then some of these craft brewers also have a process where they can't keep it long enough. The shelf life isn't long enough. Whatever ingredients they're using doesn't stay long enough. So the process of transporting it and storing it on a shelf, it goes beyond the actual shelf life of the product, and it becomes bad or spoiled or skunky or whatever you want to call it.
No. Boy, the thing, you start thinking about how complicated, like you're talking about just actually the brewery itself making good beer, making it and scaling and everything. And then you think, well, at least they can sell cans to the stores. And then you start throwing in all of these other issues. And you're like, this is almost like, it feels like an impossible task. Now it's not. Like, there's lots of breweries that are doing really well, but holy smokes, do they have to have their shit dialed in to make it work.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where, one of the is it tips, tricks, not a trap. A tip would be get an expert early, right? I mean, like, do not waste any time trying to figure out this industry. Get an expert, somebody that's worked with one of the big boys or can navigate whatever rules are in place that actually make it unfair. We'll call it unfair. It's probably not unfair. It's probably a health and safety issue that they fought for the rules on refrigeration, shelf life, and those type of things. It's actually probably a good thing, not an unfair competition thing.
I don't know. I will disagree. I would say that it's they found an avenue to put small breweries out of business and to stifle whether it's valid or not. I don't know. There seems to be a little bit of bullshit there, I think.
But at the same time, the big boys, big brewers, we're talking like SAB Miller, and InBev now that owns Budweiser. Those guys gobble up smaller breweries, right? That there's some consolidation that should be happening now, rather than closing. Some of these smaller brewers, like Weathered Souls and Busted Sandal, should have consolidated or should have considered it. So if you're out there today and you're thinking about this, like, there's 5 of us in town, what would it look like if we were one company rather than 5 companies trying to do 5 different things?
Yeah, and that's still you're not selling out to InBev. Like, you're still not selling to the real big guys, because that's the other thing is we've seen it before. Like Goose Island's a great example. They sell to the big boys, and they probably do. Like, it increases, and they get the regular, but the people that love craft beer basically just go like, I'm out. I'm not supporting them anymore. But then they get the regular Joes supporting them that aren't as, not interested in supporting small business or whatever. But I like what you're saying is like, yeah, but there's a middle ground. What if 3, 4, 5 of us got together and made like just a kind of a critical mass, and we can use some of the same resources and cut costs, right?
That's right. Stop being redundant. You don't need 5 HRs. You don't need 5, you can actually consolidate, cut costs that way, and produce twice as many beers, right? Or 5 times as many beers. I think you can do that. You could actually form, if there's people listening to this, I think you could form a holding company we'll call it Texas Brewers Co-op or some stuff like that. And you buy 5 of these places. And all of a sudden you've got all the infrastructure in place, the brands, the beers, and all you have to do is not rebrand. You wouldn't really even have to rebrand anything. You could keep the same logos and, just keep it.
Yeah. In fact, I think it would actually hurt you to try and rebrand. You have to, that's the part of the selling point is this sort of uniqueness. But you do see that in restaurants. Like, you see restaurants, sometimes there's multiple locations of the same restaurant, but sometimes there's a bunch of individual restaurants. They look different. They feel different. And they're actually it's the same owner, but they from the outside, they look like little independent, and they are independent, but they're not little. And in fact, I was talking with the CFO last week about, I think one of the companies we were talking to at something like 29 restaurants. Like, holy smokes. And I don't know if it was, I don't know with them if it was the same brand or multiple brands or 29 individual, I'm not sure.
Yeah. So I think that sometimes you got to just stick to your knit. Bear with me.
That was worse than mine when I tried.
That was worse? That was
awful.
worse? Oh, man. That was pretty
terrible.
bad. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So now I can't even finish the thought. That
doesn't even count as a word of the day when it's, just.
I thought it was going to be smoother. Really, when I played it out in my head, it was going to be really smooth. It was terrible. All right, so don't stick to it. So if you don't know what just happened, It's an inside joke. We try to fit in 2 different words every single episode, or 2 different phrases every single episode. One of them is "stick to your knitting." So it's something my grandma said.
Did not count at all. Did not count.
That didn't count. Yeah. Didn't count. Blaine is usually the one that puts the worst spin on these, but today it was me.
You just blame me because I'm the ones that usually work that bloody fiddle hopper right into conversation. But no, today you really wedged that one in, and it did not work.
I'm gonna give you 50% on that one. 50.
Well, it's better than you are.
Mine was like a 10. A 10. Mine was a force feed. All right. Hey, speaking of like forcing things to happen, what you should be forcing things to happen in your business is forcing cash flow to work. I just had conversations with my group. I run a company called Cash Flow Mike, and we teach 8 different techniques on how to maximize cash in any given business situation. And because of that, we actually focus on not only how to do it, but how to communicate it to your client. If you're an accountant or bookkeeper, and that's what your problem is like going, I know what to tell them, they just don't take action. We're now talking to people about how to get people to take action and drive the behavior to put more cash in their pocket. These are things that are important. These are things that I can teach. We can teach anybody these skills. So go to cashflowmike.com, check it out. We have courses, we got memberships. I have an app that does this for you. By the way, did I tell you this? A guy bought the app, didn't even take the course, bought the app, sat with me for 30 minutes, just kind of showing him a few things. He goes, Mike, 2 weeks later, sold 2 clients. I charged him $1,000 a month just to do cash flow forecasting. Or not forecasting, cash flow advice, because forecasting is part of it, but we go a little bit broader than that. He goes, that's $24,000 a year I made on your app, the cost of your app.
Nice.
Tell your friends. we could use more people like you. So very low cost. He's making $24,000 a year in the first 2 weeks. You can do it too. Contact me at Cashflow Mike.
Yeah, do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Tofu, that's what he was talking about. Do it in the chat.
Yeah. Did not come across. Yeah.
Dude, we were just giving her today. I'm telling you, we're just giving her.
Yeah. Every day. So we've talked about like sort of why these breweries go under. And I think one of the things that you were asking in the description of the episode, like, well, how do you know? Like, how do you know when it's time to roll it up and do it as much on your terms as you can, right?
Yeah. So one of the things we didn't talk about that I think is, and I put it in the description, is just a phrase. I think there's an emotional turn that happens that should be one of your first indicators. It's like going, shit, fuck, this is hard. I can't do it anymore. There's an emotional heaviness about like going, I don't want to do it anymore. If you start feeling like that, that's one of the things that you're saying, we got to turn this place around or I got to get out. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's an emotional lever that gets pulled or tripped or kicked that I think you really have to pay attention to. Because, I mean, I felt it in the bar business. Guess what I did? Sold the bar. I mean, because if my heart's not in it, there's no way that my customers are going to feel it the same way. They're going to notice the difference, right? And so will your customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's well, obviously a really big sign. If you're done mentally, you're done emotionally, you're not going to be successful, right? The other side of it, though, is how many. Like, man, I listen to all these podcasts all the time from these, How I Built This with Guy Raz and ones like that. And virtually every one of these highly successful companies just about died like 10 times over. And in fact, I had someone on my podcast a couple of weeks ago. She sold her company, had an amazing exit. And I may have mentioned this before, but she said she was basically offended by an article that came out after she sold the business because it kind of made it sound like this overnight success. And she's like, it was like, I can't remember, like 8 years or something, and almost died like how many times. And there's the other side of it is if you're still engaged, like there's the famous quote, I think it was from the guy from Bonobos, one of the founders, that said, businesses don't die, founders give up. Now, it's not exactly true,
Yeah.
but what he was saying is that there's that, if you really believe you've got a market, got an opportunity, got, it's just hanging in there. And I read something a couple months ago, stuck in my brain. And they said, the quote, like, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it was kind of like, you just, some random Tuesday, it'll start to work. And if you give up too soon, you're not around for that Tuesday. Yeah. And it was just kind of like stuck in my mind of like, sometimes it's, you hang in as long as you can because things can turn and think like, man, it happens in business. Like sometimes it'll turn, sometimes the wrong way, but sometimes it'll turn the right way for whatever reason. Right.
Yeah. I think I told you a week or two ago, I just came back from that SBDC conference and the brand name had caught on. It had outgrew me. I was no longer Mike Mylan, known as Cashflow Mike. It was the company was Cashflow Mike. What a major turning event in my heart, in my mind was, oh, I created something that people think is legit, that it's always been here, right? They just discovered it. And it wasn't. This is actually the youngest of any venture I have. And it's not even 2 years old yet.
Yeah.
But it's grown faster. The brand is the first brand that I've had nationwide on my own, right? I've been with partners and things like that. And even then it's grown faster. The name has. So the turning point, so there's a lot of motivation for me to go, oh, this has got legs. This has got something that I haven't had. Well, somebody asked me the other day, says, how do I get to you? How do I get to be like you? I'm like going, this 25 years, 25 years, all this other shit, all the times I lied awake in bed, all the time I was worried about making payroll, all the times that, because when I tell the story as part of the way I teach, it's the emotion. It's the realness of what happened. I can't give you that. You have to feel it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's like, even for us at Dry Run, we've had a couple pivots since the day we started, and there was like, you're pivoting because it's like, I don't think this is working as good as it should, but these guys want us. Like that we were off by a few degrees, but it's a big freaking few degrees. No, we could have just went, it didn't work. And no, there's it's like it's working, but not great, But we looked at it and went, no, like we've got something here. The market's there. The market wants us. But it's a big freaking deal to do a pivot. Like it can be an enormous lift and it can be really scary and really stressful doing it. But that's also sometimes an option, right? It isn't just works or doesn't work. It's like, well, yeah, but are you missing an opportunity because it's like, well, I had this original idea and I'm just stuck with it.
Right. First of all, a couple things there. You use the word pivot, and some people I talk to don't understand that word, so I'll just kind of explain it. Like, you still believe in something core, and you just reintroduce it to the market a different way, right? But there's still something core. In your case, it's still forecasting. It's still, you still believe that that's a necessary thing for business success. You're just introducing to the market a different way or a different market, right? So exactly. That's kind of a pivot. And you guys have done that masterfully. I'm telling you, this last iteration of your product, from the Blaine Birch I met several years ago with Dry Run to today, night and day. And I want to congratulate you and Tarek on that, because this product, if you haven't seen Dry Run lately, if you were one of those folks that looked at it years ago or a couple of years ago or even 6 months ago and you haven't seen it now, go look at it now. It's totally different.
Totally different. We actually had a customer in today, and they had been onboarding a really complicated file, and I think it was only about 6 months ago or a year ago, and they're like, this file was so big, and we weren't ready for it, for that kind of, And they came in today and it's like, yeah, it just works. Right. And, so we're making progress, but like, we also realize the pivot for us has been basically stop, retool, and basically relaunch. And it wasn't like it's not like it wasn't like there's a point where we were actually growing fairly fast. And then we started to see cracks in the foundation and went, we've missed we're off here. We're off a few degrees because we might be growing, but it's going to flatline. But then how come these guys over here that are really good clients love us? How do we do this? And so it was, and I appreciate you saying that, but honestly, from internally, it feels like we've been in the boxing ring with Rocky for about the last 10 rounds at this point. You're just kind of bloodied and barely standing, but it feels like it's worth it. It feels like it was worth that, getting beaten up like that, right?
It's like your friend, right? You're a 10-year overnight success. To everybody else, it happened yesterday, but to her, it was 8 years of fighting in a ring. So, I mean, that's all of us. So that's part of it. If you're running a business right now and you're like, oh, should I give up? Should I not? Fight. Continue to fight. You have to ask yourself, is there a turnaround potential here? Don't stay married to an idea that doesn't work. You have to pivot. You have to change. You have to reintroduce it. Change your messaging. If there's a product, listen to that customer base. They're telling you exactly what they want. If you have customers, that means you have something people want. They just wanted to do something a little bit better. And maybe I call them two mores, but still two mores give you valuable information about what's there, because occasionally you'll see some overlap.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go back to my old business. Like, I had a creative agency for over a decade, and there was a time probably around 2006, 2007 that it was just rinse and repeat. And honestly, I didn't even appreciate it at the time. We barely had to do business development because, 70% of our clientele were government agencies on the provincial level and a chunk of that in the city as well. And we just got referred over and over and over and over again. And we just we always had work, and we always had there was always referrals. And then 2008 hit, and suddenly those budgets started to slam shut. All budgets slammed shut, but we had to survive, and we had to pivot over to moving to almost all commercial, all corporate work. And we kept it going partly because I had a room full of people, and the room full of people had families, and, we're paying for homes and paying for everything else. And we just managed to keep it going. But I will tell you, there was a lot of days where I would take a big, deep breath before I'd walk into the office, because I could barely walk down the stairs, and, chest was tight, and you're walking up. And then before you walk in the office, you take a deep breath and you walk in and go, hey boys, how's it going? And you got to be on, and you got to be confident. You got to be, and we stuck with it, and we did that transition, and we found these clients that were out there, and it was a really pretty massive pivot in market for us. And it was so hard. Somehow we just sort of managed to pull it off by the skin of our teeth. Was it the right thing to do? I guess maybe we managed to sneak through, but there's a lot of days that if it wasn't if it was just me, myself, and I, and it wasn't a bunch of people depending on me for their income, I don't know if I would have stuck with it, because it was so bloody stressful, right?
Yeah. Well, so why didn't you quit?
Well, I think two reasons. One, like I said, because of all my team and my staff that depended on those jobs. But there's also, even with Dry Run, doing a tech startup is not an easy life to take, right? I don't do very well with quitting. I think I don't do well with it. I just don't. And there's something there that I'm like, I will go through a bloody wall, and you're going to have to freaking kill me. I don't know why, and whether that's a smart decision or not, that's how I'm wired. But that's maybe why we're alive, right?
Yeah, well, you know what's funny is that some people. I mean, what I like about that there's some internal heart thing that's making you find the right path. Some people don't quit because I invested all this money, I invested all this time. That's sunk cost. You got to let that go.
Yeah, that's not a reason to. Yeah.
That is not a reason to quit. Is because you just invested money. You knew the minute you threw your first dollar into your business, it could be gone. Same way with the stock market. Same way with
Yep.
anything you do. So do not let the fact that you're going to lose money be the reason why either you stay or you go or you don't go when it's time to go. Right?
Yep.
That money's gone, or you've got to pivot and find the right path.
Yeah. But it's the opportunity, right? And they talk about, and we've seen it a million times over, is product market fit. You may very well, like we've had a product that people really wanted, and we're like, oh shit, they want it, and they're a really good market, and they'll pay top dollar. We have to retool the product to technically be able to handle the scale, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the market was there, the opportunity was there, the need was there, people wanted it, and it was like product market, and we missed, or we kind of hit, like it was sort of there, like there was a time where it was sort of half-ass working. I don't think it was working well enough, and then when we basically sat down and went, no, we missed, but it's there. There's a huge chunk that's there. It's getting the fit, is to get the two to hit together, right? And that's the challenge. But as an entrepreneur, if you see that opportunity and you're like, man, it's right there. It might take a big pivot, but it may not be that it's like I think I've said this on this show before. Like only about 10% of tech startups are successful. Like 90% are unsuccessful. There's no way it should be like that, because there's no way you can convince me that 90% of the ideas were bad and 90% of the execution was completely ass. I think there was a lot of those tech startups where there was a lack of patience by the people who are helping to capitalize those businesses, because I think you're not getting 100%. You're not even getting probably 50%, but 10%, that's bullshit. There was a lot of successful business opportunity for highly successful businesses that went under because it wasn't the flavor of the day anymore, and they didn't do it right the first time. That's not a way to judge a business, right?
Yeah, that's why I always like a company that can get some traction first before they raise money, right? Because you've got a little bit more leverage in the marketplace. You got a little bit, if you raise money too early, in my opinion, you can't tell the story the same way, and you're beholden to whoever has got the money. You got to make their decisions, right? And if you're in a position right now, and I'm going to talk about when to maybe fold, right? We haven't really said when should you fold, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're hoping for a miracle, like a big investment, you should fold. Don't hope for a miracle. Know that it doesn't matter if I get that or not. I can still make this happen. Maybe not as quickly. Remember, an investment only accelerates what you're trying to do. It should accelerate your plan, be a force multiplier to your staff, not be your guiding rope, your savior.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there.
Go ahead.
Because I just mentioned the guy from, and I'm pretty sure it was Bonobos was the one I'm thinking of, which is a very well-known brand that's sold for bajillions, like millions of dollars to a larger entity. And if I remember the story right, he was down to days in cash flow, days. And he got that investment, and a few years later sold. And the woman I was talking with the other day, and I'm trying to remember the name of the company off the top of my head. She said that they were working on an investment. They ended up selling the business because it came sort of out of the blue. They sold their car to make payroll to try and land this thing. And so Like I can't make that decision for you, but there's a lot of these stories where they just hung in that extra day, right?
You actually didn't disagree with me because those were already things that were in place. They'd already made the decision to pivot. They'd already made the decision to go get an investment. If you're sitting there and you don't know what to do and it's just hard and you're hoping for a miracle, it ain't going to happen.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood because I thought it was the
I think I said
getting an investor. Yeah. Okay.
No.
Okay.
They were already down the path of I'm going to get an investment. But if you're hoping for a miracle, I think it was the words I used. Don't. It's too late. If you're already hoping on a miracle, it's too late.
Yeah, no. You can't run a business on a miracle. You can run a bit like you can survive on there's a huge opportunity. I can see the opportunity. I can see the product market fit. I can see the willingness to pay and all of that. No, I sort of misunderstood because I was thinking that it was the miracle of getting an investor, but I was kind of giving credit. But if it's just simply, I'm hoping for a generic miracle, it's not going to happen. Yeah.
All right. But what you described is the exact strategy that a lot of VCs use, which is you have to, part of due diligence and part of, trying to get their investment, you have to disclose what's happening in your company. These are smart guys. They're like going, they got about 78 days worth of cash left. Let's wait till day 70 and then make them an offer. That is a strategy deploy. You can talk about it, maybe not, maybe so. That's why people have all these stories. I was down to my last dollar. I had to sell my car. I had to, I didn't know if I was going to make payroll. And then I got this big investment. That wasn't by luck. That was by design. And you got to know that before you start to raise money, that if you're short on cash now, they're going to run you down to where you're fucking desperate and you're going to take whatever offer they give you.
Yeah. And now everything you hear about, especially like VCs, but a lot of the investment community is they want you to be in the black. And I'm a little bit shocked that they have as much leverage as they do if you're in the black because, yeah, really? Okay.
Well, yeah, but again, you look at it as I'm already good. I can be better, faster. Remember I said it's a force multiplier or an accelerator. That's what it should be.
I just think they're not doing the rescues anymore. That last ditch effort. They really want you to be in the black. Now the part that I find really offensive is that there's a lot of businesses that are not around today that probably should be, but they were basically, here's some money, blitzscale, burn to grow fast, burn to grow fast, burn to grow fast. So in other words, you're losing money every single month, and a lot of times, a lot of money every single month with this grow, because we'll give you more money. And then one day they went, no, we changed our mind. We want you in the black. Well, these businesses were set up to burn and they couldn't react fast enough. They couldn't scale down fast enough. So there's a whole bunch of, really good tech businesses that I think failed because these investors changed the rules and abandoned ship. And now they're just like, oh, if you have AI in the name, we're going to throw money in. Okay, well, we'll see how that goes. There's going to be a lot of pets.com in there,
Yeah, the market shifts. You have to play into that. That's why there is AI now. That's why there was the sharing gig economy type stuff that happened, right? If you see it, it happens in, not cycles, but categories.
Yeah. And they pile in and there's a lot of bad ideas, a lot of zombie companies that are dead on arrival, but happens.
All right, here's some bullshit. I looked up, remember you said I got distracted by a guy's comment because it was in German? Yeah. Chelsea told me it says, I don't have a father. Not me, whoever wrote it, tofu. So I'm like going, now that really fucking bothers me. I'm like going, that's pretty sad. If you don't have a father, why would you put it in the chat?
I will say right from the start with that chat is I'm still curious if that is actually a bot. Because it feels a little bit like it feels like maybe not a real person, but I'm not totally sure. So
If it's a real person, it's a really sad person.
It's a really sad person. If it's a bot, it's a kind of a sad bot, actually.
It's a super sad bot. I mean, we love our robot founders or whatever, the robot overlords, but this one's a sad one. Could you take this one back?
This is a little bit of a sad one. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
All right, man. Hey, this was a hard episode, right? Because we're talking about closing your business. We're talking about, things that sometimes happen, but I think that's the great thing about our podcast. I don't think we're afraid to talk about stuff like this. So I think it worked.
There's not a whole lot we're afraid to talk about, but you can support our podcast by going to mikeandblaine.com and buy us a beer. Again, $5. I said to Mike the other day, I really want to see us have 10 beer sponsors in one episode. And they start and end at different times. So we may have to, we need a few more. So, hey, if you want to buy us a beer, head over to mikeandblaine.com. We would love to have you as a sponsor, but also make sure you like, subscribe, follow. We're on all different networks. So it's not just one thing. You got to do all, do one of them, whatever network you're watching us on.
Hey, if you're going to do anything, subscribe, because we found that helps us the most.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That is the biggest lift you can give us. Go subscribe.
Yeah. I got to mention, so we randomly put up a little TikTok channel from Dry Run, but I actually routed some of the shorts from Mike and Blaine to that because I'm like, we'll put some on there. And we had one of my staff said today, hey, one of your shorts just had 1,800 views. So that was kind of fun. I was like, really? We didn't do anything. So that's kind of fun. So
nice.
Hey, there you go.
Good.
So if you're on TikTok, if you follow Dry Run, the Mike and Blaine clips will go up there. But otherwise, make sure you follow us and subscribe on YouTube. That's one of the fun places, and all the podcast networks, and we stream live to LinkedIn, generally Facebook. Yeah, when it works. Yeah.
But hey, 163 is in the books. You've been listening to Mike and Blaine. We'll see you next week.
Check out their website at mikeandblaine.com. Then subscribe to the podcast and buy these guys a beer.